When we think about building powerful AI, we usually think bigger is better, right? More data, more power, more everything. But what if I told you the real secret isn't about more, but about finding the perfect recipe? Today, we're diving into a fascinating story where a smarter approach gave incredible results with just a tiny fraction of the usual resources.
So, to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to understand what's happening in AI right now. Honestly, it's kind of like an arms race. The main philosophy for years has been just brute force. If you want a better language model, you just throw more and more at it.
And when I say more, I mean astronomically more. Most of the big-name language models you use are trained on over 1 trillion tokens. A token is basically a word, or even just a piece of a word. 1 trillion of them? Well, it's an amount of text that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. And, this whole more is better thing, it comes with a massive price tag. We're talking huge amounts of computing power, months of just non-stop training, and costs that can easily spiral into the millions of dollars. It's super expensive and, frankly, not very efficient.
So that gets you thinking, right? This is the killer question that kicked off this whole experiment. What if all that data isn't created equal? What if you could get pretty much the same result, but with only 10% of the data? Could we finally start training these things smarter, not just bigger?
The researchers behind this decided to stop treating data like a giant landfill to be dumped into the AI. Instead, they started thinking of it like ingredients for a recipe. Their whole theory was that the mix of data was way more important than the total amount. It's all about giving the AI a perfectly balanced diet.
So, they landed on 3 key ingredients. First up, we have finePDFs. Think of this as the structured professor. We're talking high-quality, perfectly written academic texts that build a really strong foundation. Then there's DCLM-baseline, which is basically the wild, real world, a huge, diverse pile of filtered web content. And finally, FineWeb-Edu, the helpful guide. This is a curated set of educational websites that kind of bridges the gap between the perfect world of textbooks and the messy real world.
Now, finding the right blend here wasn't just a lucky guess. Oh no, the team ran over 50 different controlled experiments, carefully tweaking the ratios of these ingredients to find that one perfect mix. It was a serious scientific hunt for the ideal recipe.
But here's where it gets really fun. The path to figuring this out, it was paved with some spectacular failures. I mean, some of the most obvious common sense ideas about how you should teach an AI just went completely, horribly wrong.
Okay, check this out, because this slide just perfectly explains the problem. When they trained a model only on that perfect textbook data, it became an amazing test taker. It aced the test on stuff it had already seen. But the second you showed it new, real-world text, performance completely fell off a cliff. It basically memorized the answers, but couldn't think for itself at all.
So what's the next logical idea? I mean, it's how we humans learn, right? You start with the simple stuff, the basics, and then you move on to more complex things. A curriculum for the AI? That's gotta work.
Well, nope. It was a total catastrophe. The model started off great on the high-quality data, but the very moment they switched it over to the diverse web data, it had what's called catastrophic forgetting. It literally forgot what it had learned, and its performance just tanked.
The big lesson here was that these sudden, hard switches between different kinds of data are just toxic for the model. It didn't matter which way they did it, clean to messy or messy to clean. Both ways failed miserably. The model either forgot everything or it just couldn't generalize to new information at all.
But then, out of all these failed experiments, came the big eureka moment. After trying all these complicated multi-stage learning strategies, the team found an answer that was just beautifully simple.
This is it. This is the secret sauce, the optimal data recipe. It's a simple, static mix. 50% from the professor, 30% from the real world, and 20% from the guide. No fancy stages, no curriculum. Just mix it all up from day one and let it run. It was the Goldilocks solution.
And the reason this balanced diet works so well is pretty elegant. That 50% of high-quality data gives the model a rock-solid understanding of grammar and structure. The 30% of web content gives it the diversity it needs to handle the messy real world. And that 20% of educational content, it's the perfect bridge connecting the two.
I mean, the numbers here just speak for themselves. This simple approach wasn't just a little better. It was 2.7 times better at understanding new information and was twice as fast to train as those complicated curriculum methods. The simplest idea turned out to be the most powerful one.
So, the team had their perfect 1 billion token recipe. There was only one thing left to do: put it to the ultimate test. How would this new, lean model, trained on a smarter dataset, actually compare to its giant predecessor, the original GPT-2?
And the results are just stunning. Take a look at this. The new model, trained on just 1 billion tokens, got an average score of 38.15%. The original GPT-2, which was trained on 10 times more data, scored 39.13%. I mean, those scores are practically identical. It's an absolutely incredible validation. Let that just sink in for a second. This proves you can get over 90% of a model's performance with only 10% of the data. It's just a massive statement that when it comes to AI, the quality in the mix of your data is so much more important than just the raw quantity. So, what does this all mean for us? Let's boil everything down into an actionable recipe and a few key lessons for anyone interested in building AI the smart way. Here it is, the winning recipe, laid out nice and clear. A 50-30-20 split. And the strategy couldn't be simpler. Just use a static mix, shuffle it all together from the start, and just hit go. No need to overthink it. And these are the 4 huge lessons that came out of all those experiments. 1. The data mix is everything. 2. Simple static mixing is way better than complex curricula. 3. Avoid any sudden changes in your data. And 4. If you want your model to work in the real world, you absolutely need diversity. And all of this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This whole thing proves that a better recipe will always beat a bigger pile of ingredients. It really makes you wonder, where else in technology are we just throwing more and more data at a problem when we should be taking a step back and trying to find the right recipe?